Hello, friends. Alleluia. Christ is risen. We are in this Easter season and we are rejoicing in this Easter season. We have many reasons to rejoice here at Lyra. The work is continuing on. We're continuing to get many things done. And as spring has sprung, so are many projects and different processes and different things getting going out here. So we'll have some more videos to talk about that as time goes along. My name is Pastor Christopher Maronde. I am the director of the Lutheran Institute of Regenerative Agriculture, and we've been bringing to you a series of webinars this year here in 2023, and it's been a lot of fun to interact with local folks, with those from around the country, to interact with those kind of within the Lutheran world and those who are outside. And it's been an incredible joy to see the different faces and hear the different voices who have been able to contribute to the conversation that we have here. And today we're very, very happy, very excited that Joel Salatin was willing to make time in his busy schedule to come and join us and be a part of our webinar today. Joel Salatin is a farmer in Swope, Virginia, Polyface Farms. We'll have him explain a little bit more about that. And I should have had the books out so I could just show them to you. I'm not going to go digging through my cabinet right now, but he's the author of numerous books, including You Can Farm, which is one that will probably be kind of required reading for our interns and our summer apprentices, and Polyface Designs, Pastured Poultry Profits, Salad Bar Beef, that all, and a number of other books. And maybe on the second half of the webinar, I'll show you the covers of those. But we are incredibly happy to have him with us today. Thank you so much, Joel, for being a part of our webinar series this year.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Christopher, it's wonderful to be with you. Yes.
Well, let's just start out. A lot of folks know about you and know about Polyface Farms, but there probably are some who are watching today who have no idea, who have never heard. And I'd love to just kind of hear you in your own words, kind of describe what you're doing out there, what you've been doing for the last several decades, and what is Polyface Farms, what does it look like, and what's kind of, if you could boil it down, because I guess we could spend the entire hour dissecting this, but if you boil it down, what is the agricultural philosophy that drives your work there in Virginia?
Yeah, so a little bit of the practical background. So my parents came to this place here in Virginia, Shenandoah Valley in 1961 after losing a farm in a junta in Venezuela, South America. Dad was there for 12 years and mom was there for 10 years, and I was 4 when we basically fled the back doors. The machine guns came in the front door. I won't, go into all the details of that story, but we ended up coming back, lost everything. Dad was 39, returned to the U.S. and looked at farms within a day's drive of D.C. because he was hoping that when things settled, we'd be able to go back. We never did. But that did bring us to the East Coast as opposed to the Midwest, where both mom and dad were from. Mom was from Ohio, dad was from Indiana. So instead of going back to the Midwest where family was, ended up here, within a day's drive of Washington, D.C., the Venezuelan embassy. That was part of that idea. So we settled here in 1961, found the cheapest, most gullied rock pile in the whole region. It was cheap, and started over. And so initially Dad asked, how do I make a living on this farm? He had numerous, experts come, and all of them said, build silos, borrow more money, graze the tree. My grandfather, his dad, had been a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine in the mid 1940s when it came out, and always had a big compost pile and some backyard chickens and different things there at his place in Indiana. And so our family had this deep-rooted kind of, ecological idea. And so Dad, a good biblical word, he eschewed all that advice. And then we started looking at other approaches. So the main thing was, well, how does how did God set this up? What's the natural pattern? And you know, you start looking around, and you realize, well, my goodness, there was very fertile soil here long before chemical fertilizer. There were healthy animals long before pharmaceuticals and drugs. You know, and so we started looking at what is the pattern, and you realize, well, animals move, and it's perennials more than annuals. So polycultures, multi-speciation, complex relationships, and carbon fertility is developed by carbon in situ. So, you know, we began composting, chipping, building portable mobile animal infrastructure, and through the 60s and throughout the 70s. And then I came back to the farm full-time September 24, 1982. And until then, we hadn't actually learned a living on the farm, but I wanted to actually earn a living on the farm. Mom was a school teacher, dad was an accountant, and the off-farm jobs paid for the mortgage. And so by the time I'm out of high school, the farm is paid for. It's basically a glorified homestead, but not a going concern. And so Teresa and I got married, made an apartment in the house attic, drove a $50 car, lived on $300 a month. If we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. We always said if we could grow toilet paper and Kleenex, we could pull the plug on society. And we dedicated ourselves to this. And you know, it was about three years before we kind of, you know, breathed and said, oh, okay, I think we're going to make it. You know, like the little engine that could. I think I can. And we finally, you know, kind of went over that hump. And now the farm, so we have beef cattle, poultry, turkeys, egg layers, broiler chickens, meat chickens. We do pigs, lamb, duck, rabbit. And so there's a pretty wide variety of things that we do. And then we direct market everything. So we have about, you know, 8,000 to 10,000 families who buy directly from us, some restaurants, some, you know, some grocers as well. And we do ship nationwide. And the farm now, you know, employs about, you know, between 20, 23, 24 people full-time, you know, servicing what we do. And so it has grown, obviously. And we were just very, very blessed with, we don't have all the answers, but we do certainly have had some wonderful answers, and it's been quite a blessing.
How do you, and I know you've got some interesting labels for things as you put in your books for what you do there. What do you think about all the labels? You know, we have regenerative in in the title of our organization. You know, there's permaculture as a label out there, sustainable. There's a farmer that we're going to be interviewing from Nebraska. We're going to interview him in a few weeks, and he, as a good Lutheran, said we should call it reformational farming. So do you claim any of those labels? Do you kind of do your own thing and let it be what it is? Are they helpful? Are they hurtful? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I've been in this long enough to have watched the different labels, you know, the different labels come and go. And you know, I guess the problem with all the labels is that they start, like so many things, they kind of start true blue, but then if they actually get traction, then the, you know, the ag industrial complex tries to, you know, well, I mean, Monsanto now, you know, their homepage website has the word sustainability all over it. They've now co-opted that term, and so we've just never gotten onto the labels very much. When people ask, I just grin and say it's profitable farming, and that always makes them stop a little bit. I don't think that's going to get co-opted by anybody very soon, and so we you know, we just don't stay away. We just kind of stay away from the labels. And in fact, if you know, my handle, my personal handle is the Christian Libertarian Environmentalist Capitalist Lunatic Farmer. And the reason I took that was because I was tired of labels. I was tired of the stereotype that, you know, if you're an organic farmer, you're supposed to be a liberal, and if you're be anti stewardship, and if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be a friend of everything artificial and everything else, factory farming and dominion, got to take dominion. And so anyway, you know, I've just always kind of stayed away from those labels and just kind of let it be what it is. And you know, and let the power of the message, carry. And and so I think, you know, I think that's it's, you know, it's kind of a little bit like the God. Yeah, it's called the gospel, but it's basically a thing, you know, the death, burial, resurrection of Christ, and your belief in that. And you know, people can come to that from a lot of different angles and a lot of different things. We've had, you know, the little wordless book that children get in Bible school, you know, with the black and you have the, you know, the Campus Crusade has the you know, the different, you know, who's sitting on the throne of your life, and you know, there's a lot of different kind of things there as well. But the thrust of it all is uh, does it build soil? Um, does it honor? In our view, is it healing? I mean, the bottom line for us is healing, and so our little moniker is healing the land one bite at a time. So all of our little bags, our publicity is all about healing. The question is, does it heal or does it hurt? And the healing is what we're after.
So that's a great lead in to my next question, and we will talk about the profitability thing. We'll discuss that at length on our second half of our webinar today. But let's kind of, that drives right into what I wanted to talk about next, which is a, as a Christian, and you've already unpacked this a little bit, and I'd like to hear some more. How do you approach your stewardship of the land as a Christian? You've always been, just as you were a minute ago, you've always been very open about being a Christian and a Christian farmer. How does that how does that affect your stewardship of the land in perhaps some profound ways that would be different than if you were not a Christian?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's such a, and thank you for asking this. I don't get asked this as much as I'd like to. A lot of times when I do media things, I'm asked, um, how can you be a, you know, a quote unquote organic farmer and be a Christian? Those are like, that's an oxymoron, you know. I mean, that's the typical thing. And so let me just, yeah, I'll unpack that for you. So the first thing is to realize, ultimately, it's not mine. None of this is mine. Now, you know, the courthouse says we own this land, and supposedly I own these trees and I own these cows. I mean, I get a check for them when I sell them. I get that, but they're ultimately, I'm simply a steward. I'm only a steward of somebody else's possession. And so just like if you were in charge of somebody else's, you know, wealth, somebody else's stuff, um, you would feel pretty compelled to make sure you return it as well as you found it. You know, the parable of the talents, right? The parable of the talents. Jesus gave these fellows talents, and he expected them to increase their talents. If God were a businessman, and he made this creation, and it was very good, as owner, he's entitled to a return on investment. Well, my question is, you know, is a dead zone, a toxic dead zone the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico, if if I own the Gulf of Mexico, would I consider that a good return on investment? Or the fact that, that in our area of Virginia here, after the Europeans came, between 3 and 5 feet of topsoil have eroded, have washed off of these hillsides that it took, thousands of years to build. Again, if I owned it, if it were my things, and I gave somebody 5 feet of topsoil and it came back with gullies and rocks, I'd say, you didn't take care of my stuff very well. And so that's how we view, we view this stewardship thing is ultimately we are simply stewards of God's stuff, which means he's entitled to, to ask for a return on investment. He wants more soil. He set it up. Isn't it amazing that what drives all this is the sun, the S-U-N. I mean, there's so many wonderful biblical parallels. Who empowers the Christian? The S-O-N, right? Who empowers the world? The S-U-N. I mean, the metaphors are just you trip over them pretty quickly. And so the sun drives photosynthetic activity. It drives biomass and carbon, and then something has to decompose. Something has to live and die to decompose to create fertility and soil fertility for something else to grow. So you've got life, death, decomposition, resurrection, life, death, decomposition, resurrection. So the whole chemical agricultural approach, part of it, including the artificial meat, artificial food thing, is all centered often around we can have life without anything dying. And you can't have life without something giving up its life. I mean, the perfect example is a compost pile. A compost pile is life going in that is dead, and then things decompose it, eat it up, digest it, and then that becomes the fuel for the next generations, the next tomato plant, the next alfalfa crop, whatever, corn crop. That's the fuel. And so the whole notion that we can grow life with chemicals, with non-life, militates against the very basic, not only foundation of ecology, but God's most beautiful metaphor for how we have life. We live when we sacrifice ourselves to each other. When I do school groups, I say, kids, listen, young people, if you want to truly have a life, then you serve. You give up yourself. And that life of sacrifice is where you actually live. And so we see this pattern, this principle throughout. So one other little aspect I would suggest is that all that means that we want all the plant and the beings under our management. So we're stewarding beings. Okay, tomatoes, pigs, cows, actinomycetes, mycorrhizae are part of our responsibility. Then a habitat, a life, a place to thrive. Most God-given talent, its most God-given gift. And so life is not just a pile of inanimate protoplasmic structure to manipulate, however cleverly I can imagine to manipulate it. It's rather a distinctive expression of God's creativity and relational synergy. And I, as steward, am to assemble the trees and the deer and the snakes and the cows and the pigs and the tomatoes and all. I'm to assemble this so that each one can fully express its physiological distinctiveness as a creation of God. Just like in the church, our goal is to create a habitat for each person to completely fulfill their legacy, their destiny legacy from God. Are you apt to teach? Are you apt to sing? Are you are you a good counselor? Are you skilled at hospitality? We have these gifts and distinctions given, and so part of our stewardship program here is to make sure that the beings that the beings are able to express their their distinctiveness and their beingness as creations of God.
And I've chewed on the idea of redemption, in that as we seek to steward the land, we are participating in some small way in the restoration of creation that will only be perfect on the last day. But it's our joy as we steward the land to bring fruitfulness. And every time that the land heals a bit, or is made more fruitful, that's such a wonderful privilege to participate in again that work that Christ will bring to full completion on the last day.
Sure. Yeah, well, too often in the faith community, Christopher, too often in the faith community, I think we allow ourselves to bifurcate our theology into kind of spiritual versus physical, and so we have our focus groups um, on spiritual issues, but we don't actually say, well, like Francis Schaeffer asked, how shall we then live? How do we actually, what does that forgiveness look like? What does mercy look like? What does abundant provision look like? What does redemption look like? It looks like a gully that is no longer a gully and is full of vegetation. And so what we want on our farm is we want visitors to come, and when they leave, we want them to say, "Oh, we've just seen mercy. We've just seen forgiveness. We've just seen redemption." We want people to say that from what they've seen. So we actually put, as they say, we actually put a physical skeleton. What I say is that creation is an object lesson of spiritual truth. We're humans. We have a hard time wrapping our heads around these biblical theological terms. And so that's why Jesus spoke in parables, right? Let me talk to you about how the gospel goes. Well, you got the sower and a seed, and you go out. Let me talk about me seeking you and finding you. You ever heard of a sheep? You ever hear a lamb lost? Well, the guy that goes out and gets the lamb, that's me. I came out and found you. I mean, that practicality is what gives structure and meaning. It gives something that we can actually grasp from the biblical thing. I'm actually doing a talk in next month at the Florida Parent Educators Association, but a state homeschool organization. And the title of my talk is Earthworm Theology.
And that kind of leads into I think the last thing I wanted to ask you on this first half of the webinar. So you've given your time very generously to us today, to an organization fledgling and getting going out here in the Midwest that you'd never heard of before. You're going down to Florida to speak next month. I think you told me in our email correspondence you're heading to Texas later this week. I assume you still do a few chores, but you're spending a lot of time on podcasts and traveling and that sort of thing. And why is that? I think it's probably been always a part of what you've done, but why here, especially now, Is it so much that you make a priority and yeah, give on the chores to others and do these kind of outreach things? Why is that important to you?
Well, it's important to me because I think that I think that humanity has um, has not done well, has not done well as stewards of creation. I mean, you can look at the rise and fall of empires and civilizations throughout history, and it has often followed the the path of ecological destruction. And and so I'm concerned. I My heart is I want to see certainly the faith community, but I want to see everyone, not just the faith, but everyone recognize our responsibilities as stewards of God's creation, and and certainly the faith community as well. But more than that, my fellow man, my neighbor needs nutritious food, junk food. They need and they need health, and you can't get health from chemical fertilizer. You can't get health from factory farming. You can't get health from pesticides, herbicides, and everything else. Now, you can get volume for a period of time, but there comes a time when when nature starts responding. And I'm old enough. I'm older than you are, obviously, but I can remember growing up. You never heard the phrase food allergy. You didn't hear gluten intolerance. You didn't hear um, uh, you didn't know anybody that had diabetes. You knew one fat person. There was always the fat lady and the fat guy. But there was one. It wasn't a whole bunch. And and we never heard the terms, high path avian influenza. We never heard Campylobacter, Listeria, uh, E. coli, Campylobacter. And what all this is God's creation, I think, on its knees, begging, enough. Please stop. Stop abusing me. Stop abusing me. And somebody needs to raise a voice for God's creation and say, hey, we need to start protecting this, so that we have an object lesson of redemption to share, but also just so my neighbor can have good food to eat, so my neighbor can be healthy, so there is enough food, to go around, that sort of thing. And I want farmers to be successful. Again, I've seen in my lifetime, I've watched our gullied rock pile turn into literally an Eden of production, and it's gone from just unsightliness to highly productive. And and I'm not saying this proudly. I'm saying this humbly and gratefully, that these principles work. And when you find truth, when you find truth, if your heart is grateful about it, when you find truth, you want other people to know that truth. You don't want other people to continue struggling in untruth. You want people to find the truth, see the truth, and then enjoy the truth.
Wonderful. Thanks be to God. I On the second half of our webinar, we're gonna kind of dig in on the practical side of all of this. We're going to dig in on profitability. We're going to dig in on how you actually go into restoring the soil. What does that look like? Kind of give a little bit of a little bit more of the nuts and bolts after we've laid the very important philosophical, but more theological foundation here in this first half. So friends, we invite you to enjoy the second half of our webinar, which will be posting up just a day or two after we post up this one. Our guest for this first half of our webinar has been Joel Salatin, farmer in Swope, Virginia, Polyface Farms. We'll have a link to Polyface Farms on our website, and you can definitely find more interviews and more YouTube many more YouTube videos featuring Joel on the internet as well. We'll put up some links to some of those things as well. Joel, thank you for being with us here in this first half of the webinar, and we'll look forward to having you on the second half.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Friends, have a wonderful day. God's blessings. Please check out the second half of the webinar.